Being on the board is a privilege. You are representing your membership, and with that privilege comes responsibility. You have to read your board packets. You should know what you're supposed to be doing as a board member. I know a lot of us think that our manager should just be doing all the things and they should be telling us all the things, and we just rely on them to do that. But there is some education on your part that you should be doing so that you can make smart decisions. You're responsible for managing millions of dollars worth of assets for your community, in some cases multi-millions dollars of assets. So act as such and act like you're doing that.
HOA Insights, Common Sense for Common Areas, exists to help all 2 million volunteer board members nationwide have the right information at the right time to make the right decisions for their future. This podcast is sponsored by 4 companies that care about board members: Association Insights and Marketplace, Association Reserves, Community Financials, and Kevin Davis Insurance Services. You'll find links to their websites and social media in the show notes.
Welcome back to HOA Insights, Common Sense for Common Areas. I'm Robert Nordlund, and I'm here today for episode number 64 with a special guest to talk about board member leadership. So what makes some boards and board members more effective than others? It's not background or education. Today we have a special guest who will share her experience working with board members for over 10 years, sharing her insights about the 4 essential traits crucial for leaders to embody to most effectively serve their association. Well, I hope you enjoyed last week's episode number 63 with regular co-host Julie Adamen, where we had an important discussion about special assessment success. If you're facing a cash flow crisis at your association, 30 minutes spent listening to that episode will be well worth your time. But if you missed that episode or any other prior episode, you can find them on our podcast website, hoainsights.org, on your favorite podcast platform, or on our YouTube channel. But better yet, subscribe to the podcast from any of the most popular podcast platforms to get every episode delivered right to your phone or mobile device. Well, we do enjoy hearing from you, so if you have a question you'd like us to address, leave us a voicemail at 805-203-3130. Leave a comment on the YouTube video or send us an email at podcast@reservestudy.com. Now, the question that prompted today's episode was from Madison from Trenton, New Jersey, who wrote simply, "Any help on how I can be better at my job of being a board member?" And that's exactly why we have today's guest with us today. Kelly Zibell, AMS and PCAM, is the Senior Vice President of Communitas Management in Northern California. Kelly has extensive community association management experience, and during those years, she has also served in leadership with CAI on a local and national level, and with other trade organizations. Over the years, Kelly has developed a keen eye for board members' strengths and weaknesses, spending time developing board member leadership skills in order to help them implement necessary change at their association. Kelly recently spoke on leadership at the CAI National Conference in Vegas in early May this year, and I knew our audience would love to hear from her directly. So, Kelly, welcome to the program.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
All right. Well, tell us about the essential traits of effective board members that you've summarized as the 4 C's.
So earlier this year, I had the opportunity to hear a leadership speaker named Adam Markle, and he was actually speaking about the ability to be resilient and change-proof. But he has a lot of other kind of leadership research, and as we were putting together the panel that spoke in Las Vegas, we were talking about what makes a good board member, or what makes a good manager, and what skills are important for that. And Markle had really kind of summarized these up in an article that we thought was great, and I'll share with you so you can kind of post in the podcast notes. But the 4 C's that he talks about are confidence, commitment, courage, and connection. Confidence, which is, we really summarized and talked about as your ability to communicate, because your ability to come off as confident to your audience and as a board member that you are confident in the running of the community and you know what you're talking about and you know what you're doing and making decisions of the community is really the way in which you communicate with others. So what underlies the trait of competence is all of the communication skills. So body language, tone of voice, how you project yourself in a meeting, the words you use to communicate with, how you handle a difficult situation when there's a confrontation going on from the audience, and how you can use language to diffuse those kinds of situations. So really, confidence is kind of, we've equated it to communication in our industry. For board members, how you communicate is really your ability to be confident. And that's kind of the foundational leadership skill.
Yeah. Is that also maybe even being confident in your abilities enough or where you stand that you can offer a smile in a tense situation, a disarming smile, lowering the temperature of what's going on?
Yeah, all of those things can feed in from a competence perspective, and knowing when to do those things, when you can use a smile, or when a smile might come off as a smirk to somebody who's potentially already agitated. So when's the appropriate time to use those things are communication skills, and but being the ability to communicate effectively makes you come off as more competent. The second trait that we've talked about is commitment. And this is the trait that I see most board members not necessarily understanding or practicing. And commitment is creating a shared vision or being committed to a purpose. And what that looks like in our communities or homeowners associations is the ability for the board to sit down and do strategic planning and to think about what is the long-term needs and visions of the community and how do we get there? Because board members either have term limits or they will leave the board or the board changes for whatever reason. But the strategic needs or plan for the community should largely remain the same over kind of a 3 to 5 year period. But a lot of board members don't spend time sitting down saying, who's moving into our community? What are the type of people that are moving in here? Is it young families? Is it active adults? What are the amenities we have today? And what are the amenities potentially that we need to add or change? Right? Pickleball is a great example. We have a tennis court, but people want to play pickleball. No one's using the tennis court, but pickleball might be an option. Well, asking your residents and kind of coming up with a strategic plan that then gets shared with the community, gets shared with your manager. So even if your manager changes, or even if the board changes, there's sort of a North Star and a guiding direction and a shared vision for the community. So we talk about creating commitment, or how you develop commitment, as putting together a strategic plan for the community.
Got it. You got me thinking now, and it seems like that could help so many associations, because rather than me or you, my way, your way, my opinion, your opinion, if you can focus on, use the word North Star, what's best for the association, how can we come together and focus on, well, gee, I'd like garbage pickup on Wednesday rather than Tuesday because I have bridge club on Tuesday in my living room. But what's best for the community is the way it is now. And focusing less on myself or your difference of opinion, but then again, the community in general. How can we serve the association? Is that a little bit of what you're talking about here?
Absolutely. And so I had a consulting practice prior to the current role that I'm in. And most of the time, my consulting practice with my clients was spending time with them doing strategic planning. Regardless of what they ended up hiring me for, we always started with strategic planning because it was difficult for them to achieve their goals if they didn't have a bigger kind of overarching plan that all the board members felt like they had input into and gave everybody a direction to row the boat in the same manner. So we're not, all rowing around trying to find our own thing. And that, creating a strategic plan allows you to factor in a lot of things, right? What are the building inspection needs for the laws that are changing throughout the country, and a lot more building inspection laws. Reserve studies are coming into play in some markets where they haven't come into play before. In California, we've had them for years, so it's not a new thing for us. But in some markets, you're now having to do a reserve study or fund your reserves. So being able to factor those things in, plus what your community looks like from a demographic perspective, who's moving in, what are your amenities, what's your financial situation look like, really evaluating all of that and going through a process to come up with a strategic plan. Takes a little bit of time in the beginning, but then you revisit it annually and kind of update it. And then you sort of have a roadmap and a set of strategic kind of overall big goals, and everybody knows what you're working on. So we don't get sucked into the day-to-day minutia of the dog poop letter or the trash can violation. You can point your manager towards saying, these are the big needs for the community, and I need you working on these things. Yes, those things are important, but they're not the most important thing. We have to make progress on these bigger kind of goals for the community, but if they don't know what those goals are, it's a challenge. And so I find the best board members and communities have this trait of commitment because they've created a shared vision for the community, and that vision gets passed on from board to board to board, and their manager follows along in that. So it provides a really big sense of continuity. And for new board members getting onto the board, really helpful for them to understand what those priorities are and why things are working the way they're working from a board perspective.
Yeah, well, you said it just a moment ago. I wrote down 2 more C words based on, you got my brain thinking on this. I wrote down consistency, bridging the new board member transitions, bridging management transitions, and continuity. So those 2 things where all of a sudden, like you just mentioned, as a new board member, you're wondering, okay, I came here because I want to help the association's financial situation, or I came here because at my last association, I helped on the roof project and we need a roof project here. When you realize what is the commitment of the board, these are overarching goals, then all of a sudden you can fit in, and it's more than just your pet project, or it's more than just the particular skills that you bring to the board. All of a sudden you're boarding a moving train that has momentum. And if those are written down, boy, I can see how that makes so much things smoother and easier at the association.
The third trait, which I think is the one that is resonating a lot these days, is courage. And Markle kind of describes this as sort of challenging the status quo, embracing innovation, kind of pushing boundaries. But really, this is the ability to make tough decisions in the event, even in the face of adversity. And as a board member, you're called on, especially now, to make tough decisions. It's not fun to raise assessments to the community because your insurance has gone up, or because you've gotten that building inspection report back and there's a ton of repairs that need to be done. But it's required that you do that. It's part of your job. You have to make the decision that's the best decision for the community, even if it's not the best decision for you personally. And it's tough as a manager, to be able to give that advice to your clients. But it's really tough as a board member to have to make those decisions. But not making those decisions is showing a lack of courage, basically. And then when you make those tough decisions, being able to explain them to the community, so being confident in the decisions you make and pulling on those communication styles we talked about, that's where those 2 kind of really marry up together in terms of confidence and courage. But I think board members today are being called on to act very courageously and make decisions that are not popular within the community, because someone just living in the community doesn't understand all the things that you're looking at from an input perspective. But you still have to make the decision, even if it's going to make your neighbor that you'll see at the mailbox a little bit frustrated with you and probably give you an earful about it.
Yeah, well, I think our audience knows these kind of challenges, but I'm thinking that there's so many board members, and I think back to my experience too. When I joined the board, it was because there was a problem that needed to be solved at the association, lack of board members, and I just volunteered, and I had really no idea what I was getting into. And I think there's a lot of board members in a similar situation that they did not fully appreciate the responsibility that they have in this role, that they're running a multi-million-dollar not-for-profit real estate organization. And that takes, like you say, that takes courage to know, gee, we need the money, or gee, we need to fire our landscaper who's been with us for 15 years because, frankly, good old Fred is not moving as fast as he used to. and we need someone new. Whatever the decision is, your response, you have a task to move the association safely and successfully to the future. And sometimes that means change, and change takes courage to implement that change, whether it's financial, personnel, we need to change the management company, or the minutes are always late, or the financials always need to be fixed, whatever it is. Courage to see and courage to make that change, or at least confront the issue. How can we make this better? So I like that. I think you're right.
Yeah.
There's challenges everywhere we look. It's hard to be a board member. And again, our audience is first in line to know the answer to that question. It truly is.
So the last one, which I love, is connection. And connection is, we can read into it as a board member a number of different ways, but connection is taking the time to get connected with other homeowner leaders. So there are a lot of industry groups, CAI, some of the other places where you can get connected to other homeowner leaders. There's forums and things like that where you can ask questions and get answers to problems and challenges you're facing as a board member. And I think sometimes board members feel like they're alone, or the only person they're connected to is their manager or management company. And there really is a lot of resources out there for you as a homeowner leader. The other thing is for owners to remember, or board members to remember, that they serve their ownership. They serve the members of the community. And so being able to, as part of your strategic planning process, or just in general, part of connecting with the community, we know not a lot of people make the time to come to board meetings unless they're upset about something. But a couple of things that I do with my clients, we always ask questions about, when's the last time you surveyed the community about how things are going, or what their needs are, or things they'd like to see happen? And the answer is usually, we've never done that. And it's a very simple process. You can use things like SurveyMonkey or Microsoft Forms or Google Forms. A lot of those tools are free or very cheap and inexpensive. And you can put out a survey. It's not someone collecting paper, putting things together. All these survey tools can really help you get some data and give your homeowners feel more connected to the place that they live. That builds community. And so connection as a board member is really about connecting yourself with other homeowner leaders who are in the same situation, but also taking time to connect with the membership who sort of elected you to this role to govern the community.
Kelly, I like that. Just the way they all fit together, and they come together with another C word, and that's community. I've got a host of follow-up questions, but let's take a quick break right now to hear from one of our sponsors before we follow up on those additional questions.
Is your HOA or condo self-managed and you don't want to work as hard volunteering? Are you full managed and looking to save money? Or are you looking to split the accounting from a manager's role for better service? Let Community Financials handle the monthly accounting for you. We collect dues, pay bills, produce financial reports, include portals, and help with other support services, all while providing awesome service. We'd love the opportunity to help you make your community accounting stress-free with our industry-leading systems and expert team. Visit our website, communityfinancials.com, to learn more.
And we're back. Well, Kelly, how can board members develop these traits? How can they get better at doing these things that in the end will benefit their community?
Well, I think when we talk about, confidence, in the area of confidence, it's about developing your communication skills. So if you think you're communicating enough, you're probably not communicating enough. Especially if you're facing funding challenges as an association, you're going to go ask for more money. Until people start telling you you're communicating too much, you're probably not communicating enough, because someone's not getting the message. So figuring out how we can better and more communicate things, especially when there's a significant change coming for the community, that will really help with the confidence and the membership having confidence in the decisions that the board is making. So really working on those communication skills and making sure that we're pushing communications out to membership about what the board's doing can really help kind of develop those skills, or that trait of confidence. Commitment is really about the board sitting down and doing some strategic planning. And this can be really involved, done multi-day sessions with clients.
And with a consultant.
Yeah, as a consultant. Or, it can be very simple as a board sitting down and saying, what are our top 5 priorities for the year? At your first board meeting or your last board meeting of the year, or as you're doing your budget, what are our top, 3 to 5 priorities? What are the 3 to 5 most important things for us to get done in the next year or 3 years or 5 years? I like to do a 3 or 5 year strategic plan with a client, and then we back into, okay, what does that look like for 1 year kind of operational goals? Some kind of an overarching vision or plan. And maybe we know we need to re-roof the complex. And so our goal this year is we're going to do all the things that are associating with re-roofing the complex. We're going to hire a construction manager. We're going to figure out the budget for that project. We're going to then hire a contractor. So this is our goal for the year. And then we communicate that to the membership. So courage is just making the smart decisions. You have to listen to the experts that are advising you. And if you're nervous about what's the right decision or the decision I have to make here, a lot of times your experts can help guide you or advise you. Your attorney, your CPA, your reserve analyst can kind of tell you and give you maybe an unbiased opinion about if you're looking at changing products. A lot of new technologies come out around building products. So do we add solar here where we didn't have solar before? Or can we add leak detection in because we're repiping the building? Do we add, leak detection systems in? Is that smart? You can have conversations about those things, which will help you make a decision that you then feel confident in, and you can then explain to the community. And commitment is being a part of, things that you could develop there is making yourself aware and available of the resources that are, available to you. So sitting on the board, I know it feels like a lot of times you show up at a board meeting and you're appointed to the board and now you're stuck. Because that time I was on my own board. I've been on my board almost 10 years. I showed up at a meeting, they found out what I did, and they said, here you go, you're on the board.
Come on, you can help.
Come on down. But, being on the board is a privilege. You are representing your membership, and with that privilege comes responsibility. You have to read your board packets. You should know what you're supposed to be doing as a board member. I know a lot of us think that our manager should just be doing all the things and they should be telling us all the things and we just rely on them to do that. But there is some education on your part that you should be doing so that you can make smart decisions. You're responsible for managing millions of dollars worth of assets for your community, in some cases, multi-millions of dollars of assets. So act as such and act like you're doing that.
Yeah. Well, I just thought of another C word, and that's curiosity. You need to take the time to say, well, why is this the way it is? What doesn't sit right with me? How come we were in a good financial situation 3 years ago and it's not that way now? Why did the roofer recommend this product? And the more you just let your curiosity flow, the more you're going to find the answers that are going to help you communicate and develop your own commitment about, well, I know this now. And I can explain this to the homeowners that I meet, the person that I park next to, the person that I see in the lobby. All these different traits, they seem like they feed on each other. And one trait leads to another. Now, okay, we're talking about grown-ups, board members here. How long or how much can someone develop these skills over months, or is it years?
It's up to the individual person, right? To your point, curiosity plays into this. So if someone's a naturally curious person who likes to learn, they're going to, really want to learn and understand this role of being a board member and how to do it more effectively. And they're going to want to pursue developing these skills and learning the things that they don't know about their community. And it really depends on how driven the board is. If there's a lot of conflict on the board between different personalities, it can get hard to break through those conflicts to align on things like a strategic plan or a decision on an important issue. And so how functional a board is, and also sort of a person's individual innate sense of curiosity, will really play into how they can develop these. But a lot of people have great communication skills depending on what their life journey has been. As they've, if they have been someone who has primarily worked in the home. They may have amazing like task management skills because they've been balancing the needs of their family and, all of those other things. And they may be an amazing board member at managing a project and communicating with the community because they can think of all of those things. If they've got a background in communications from because that's what they did as a profession, or they've been a teacher. A lot of times teachers make really great managers eventually because they're, really good at managing different personalities. So those kinds of people can be great as board members as well, because, everybody brings something different from their background. And I think that's a great thing about being on a board member and working in our industry. There's such a diverse background that comes into this, and you can learn a lot about a field that you might not have known about as a board member. Your background brings a lot of different things to your community that we wouldn't have known. If you have a law enforcement background or connections from a civic perspective, those things can help your community as you're being a board member in terms of connecting with local officials and making decisions for, safety, security of the community, some of those things. But, there's a lot of different skills that a board member could bring into the role. And I think how they develop these traits and can connect with, these traits are really more about how you apply the skills you already have.
Okay. I have two things I want to talk about yet, and you just touched on the second one. So the first one is you spoke about it went kind of fast. You're talking about reducing conflict. Again, another C word. That seems to be a theme here today. But the more you have commitment, the more you have a shared vision, the less conflict at your association, the less it's my opinion versus your opinion. And I don't think there's an association out there that wouldn't love to reduce conflict. If it doesn't increase property values, if it doesn't shorten up board meetings, all these other things that are likely to happen, if it reduces conflict, I'm in for the 4 C's. I'm in with both feet. But we talked about this right before we started recording. Certificate. There's a difference, and I'd like you to kind of speak to this point. There's a difference between getting a certificate, a board member's basic education certificate from a trade organization, from your state. Talk to me about the differences between getting a certificate and having these 4 essential traits.
Yeah, a certificate will largely give you, this is the legal requirements for you as a board member related to your state. And sometimes it will give you things like how to read a financial, or what a set of board minutes should look like, or how to find a professional to guide you. And that's a lot of what a certificate does, but it doesn't necessarily touch on some of the soft skills needed to be successful in the role, or be a successful board member in the job, in terms of being effective at creating that sense of community and working for the betterment of your community, kind of keeping that shared goal in mind. That certificate doesn't teach you those things. It may talk about what fiduciary duty is and that kind of thing, but when you're in practice and having to create a shared vision for your community, or even put one in place, that can be something that's harder to do, easier said than done, I guess is better way to describe that. I liken it this way. We get a lot of people who bring to the board some sort of a business background. They've been a CPA in their former lives. They or in their former life been an attorney in their current life, but they may not be the attorney that your association needs, right? And I've seen associations use an attorney that lives in the community, and that person just ends up inherently conflicted because they're not acting in the best interest of the corporation, with no interest as an owner for, providing advice around maybe not an area of expertise for them. Maybe they've been doing corporate law, but not HOA law, which is very specific in some states. I think when we think about certificates are helpful in terms of if you're a brand new board member, understanding what your responsibilities are and helping you navigate those and also build connection with other people in the industry. But it is not, I don't think, the thing that would make you be the best board member ever. It's not the only thing you can do.
Right. Well, let me see if I can wrap this up. The title of this is Effective Board Members. And so it's not what you know, it's how effective you are at leading your association. And it seems like through this conversation, we've been talking about or using words that start with the word C. And I want to bring this to close with community and these 4 traits of confidence, commitment, courage, and connection. Working effectively with those things are going to bring a shared vision and do something great to improve your community. At the end here, all I want to do is say thank you, Kelly, for taking the time to join us on today's program. Do you have any closing thoughts to share with our audience?
I mean, board members, thank you. This is not an easy job. I say this as a board member, but I also say this as a longtime manager. It is really tough being a board member. And so thank you for taking this volunteer, non-paid position, learning all these things that you have to learn and doing it really just to better your community and to be a part of your community. So just thank you.
Fantastic. Well, for more information or if you have a follow-up question, you can reach Kelly at Zibell, Zibell, at communitas.live. That's COMMUNITAS.live. Well, we hope you learned some HOA insights from our discussion today that helps you be a more effective board member, bringing common sense to your common areas. We look forward to having you join us for another great episode next week.
You've been listening to HOA Insights, Common Sense for Common Areas. You can listen to the show on our podcast website, hoainsights.org, or subscribe on any of the most popular podcast platforms. You can also watch the show on our YouTube channel. Check the show notes for helpful links. If you like the show and want to support the work we do, you can do so in a number of ways. The most important thing that you can do is engage in the conversation. Leave a question in the comment section on our YouTube videos. You can also email your questions or voice memos to podcast@reservestudy.com or leave us a voicemail at 805-203-3130. If you gain any insights from the show, please do us a huge favor by sharing the show with other board members that you know. You can also support us by supporting the brands that support this program. Please remember that the views and opinions expressed by the podcast do not constitute legal advice. You'll want to consult your own legal counsel before making any important decisions. Finally, this podcast was expertly mixed and mastered by Stokelight Video and Marketing. With Stokelight on your team, you'll reach more customers with marketing expertise that inspires action. See the show notes to connect with Stokelight.